We start with Halifax. And by the way, if you've never been there, what a place this is, the Wanderers grounds. Arguably the best place to watch a Canadian Premier League team. And arguably last year, the best place to watch the best player in the league. We start with the player of the year, Joao Morelli, who's 14 goals, got the Golden Boot and Player of the Year award last season. Before we hear from Stephen Hart and Joao Morelli, this is an interesting team that kicks off the season as early as tomorrow night. That's right. We'll be at York Lions Stadium for York United's debut of Martin Nash against Halifax. These teams met 5 times last year, by the way, and some really unbelievable games. I don't think Halifax won any of them. York, I think, won 1, and there was 4 draws, including probably the game of the year, Charlie, that happened at the Wanderers grounds, the 3-3 and the absolute torrential downpour on a holiday Monday, which was amazing. But what are your thoughts about this Halifax team? 15 returnees, a lot of stability, and then some key players coming in, familiar names, particularly to TFC Academy, like Mohamed Omar, Aiden Daniels. They're a team that Stephen Hart believes can compete for the playoffs, and it's hard to not really understand why. You can see why they like the players they've got.
Yeah, they're a team that did come really close to the playoffs last year. I think they missed out by 1 point on that 4th place spot because they didn't get the win on the last day of the year. And I think it was the right call to mostly go with the structure that was already in place with that team, because a lot of it is still a core of players that were even there in 2020 when they had a really good run at the Island Games over obviously a very short season, I think 11 games, but they went to the final. They played some good football. Last year was really tough for them in the attacking sense. They had the Golden Boot winner, obviously, but nobody else on the team had more than 3 goals in the league. And they scored the fewest goals in the league with 28. Yeah, which is obviously a frustrating thing if you're a coach like Stephen Hart. And I know that something that I think he said even this morning on his pre-match press conference was that he as a coach can direct players to get into areas. He can help them get to the penalty area, but he can't score goals for them. He can't finish into the net. And that's really what it was for Halifax, right? I don't think I've ever seen a team underperform its expected goals more than they did last year, with just the times that they would get into the box and beat defenders and get into good areas, but then the finish just wasn't there, right? I mean, a player that comes to mind, Akeem Garcia, was nominated for Player of the Year after the Island Games. Had a really tough season last year. I think he only ended up scoring 1, maybe 2 goals for that team.
2 goals in 21 appearances.
Yeah, after being such a key player for that team in both of the prior 2 seasons.
Yeah.
This is going to be a big year for him. Hopefully he's coming in fitter than last year and just probably quite motivated to contribute a lot more on the score sheet. They still have largely the same attacking group as they had last year, which is interesting. The big additions were in midfield with Daniels and Mo Omar, and that will help them a lot in terms of moving the ball quicker and getting into those areas. But really, they do need the Akeem Garcias, the Corey Bents, and so Sam Salters and so on to put the ball in the net. Because even Joao Morelli will tell you himself, he wants to arrive in the box later. He wants to create more because he's naturally a number 10. Yeah. So that's, I think, the key focus for this team this year.
Yeah, you mentioned it. Last year, so many struggles to score. In the end, Morelli was just placed everywhere. Occasionally he played as an 8, then he played as a 10, wide a little bit and drifted in, and then occasionally played almost as this false 9 player, just because Stephen Hart was just trying to throw anybody who could get into that number 9 spot. They do have a pretty solid back line when you think of Charla's one of the best defenders in the league. Rampersad, one of the best defensive midfield holders in the league as well. So that that spine down the middle, I think, can certainly help them as well. But you alluded to it. Lack of goals has been a massive problem. 19 out of 28 games last year, they scored 1 goal or less. You're not going to win many games with that kind of stat. That's a big problem for them. But yeah, Christopher says Omar looked good from the little he saw at Notre Dame. Obviously talking there clearly about Mohamed Omar, the captain, and the Colorado Rapids first-round pick as well. There's a lot of content. We have a lot of content all around these teams at CanPL.ca. In fact, every day we've been releasing over the last week or so team of the day, and Halifax is actually today, so it's actually worked out perfectly for you guys as well. So start with that. You can catch a very extended interview with Joao Morelli when he gets that later in the show as well, here very shortly as well. Lots of features, drawing challenge with Corey Bent, which was really fun as well, and he's a great personality. Anytime I can give my mate a shout out from Preston, us Preston lads have got to stick together, so I'll give him a shout out for that. And also by 20 and 10 with Stephen Hart, as we try to get enough questions in over 10 minutes. When we talked about him. And I want to show you a clip. I asked Stephen Hart this week, particularly about the rise of Canadian soccer. Stephen Hart, of course, was the national team manager and did a great job there. People remember in the end, unfortunately, how it ended with 8-1 Honduras, but was very, very good as well in terms of, nurturing a lot of these players who continue to be there. And here's my clip with Stephen Hart as he talked about what has been successful for the Canadian men's national team and now that it's helping everywhere else across Canadian soccer.
I think it's just fantastic for football in general. The players are looking at it with a lot of anticipation. None of them were born when we played in the last World Cup. It's just an exciting time period for those of us who have been exhausted waiting. It's great.
I love his enthusiasm. One of the nicest men in the game, no doubt about it. And it's delighted to see him back. I know he had a couple of health scares last year as well. And I actually said in the interview, you can go watch it, but how are you very different now? And he laughed it off because he just said he's very, very different. He also has Alex Dorado now, who comes in with a great resume that has allowed him to take a little bit of a backward step, but Stephen Hart's still the man in charge there. The man in charge on the pitch is pretty much Joao Morelli. Now, if you know Joao Morelli, he's a great personality. He's the kind of person that you want to build your team around. In fact, we like to build a league around because he's a content dream. Joao Morelli has a fantastic story. For those who don't know, Morelli played at Middlesbrough. He played a lot in the northwest of England. He's got outstanding English language qualities, even though he's from Brazil. His own story himself, where he almost died when he was a 10-year-old boy after an accident, and obviously what happened to his skull. You can go check that out as well. Lots of interviews on that, particularly with me last year on Beyond the Pitch as well. And there's lots of things that Joao Morelli can talk to you about. He's an inspirational figure, Charlie. And before we hear from him, I know you had a chance to sit down with him, so I'd like to hear your thoughts about what you had to chat with him on.
Yeah, Joao's just a great guy, and as he said, a great character to have in the league because he's so much fun to watch. His goal celebrations are great as well. The thing that strikes me most about Joao is how happy he is in Halifax, and that feels like a bit of something that maybe wasn't totally expected, something that he might not have expected coming from Brazil. He played before that in Estonia, I think, and he was in England at Middlesbrough and Fleetwood Town and a few other clubs, but he seems to have kind of rekindled his love for the game in Halifax. He's a lot happier there. He's become much closer friends with the rest of his team. He said that it was a bit of a struggle for him, to be honest, making friends and making connections in Europe with the clubs he was at. And he feels like he's matured a lot since that. So the Joao Morelli that we have now in Halifax is a really important player to that team and to that locker room, because not only is he fantastic on the pitch, but he's seen the game all over the world. And he's a good ambassador for, I think, Canada and for the Canadian game when he goes home to Brazil or when he speaks to anybody else from around the world. He only has good things to say about the city and the league, and especially the fan base in Halifax. He said, because last year he played his first game at the Wanderers grounds, he said it blew him away. It was in the rain. I think it wasn't even full capacity yet, but he walked out on that pitch and he was just flabbergasted at the atmosphere at Wanderers grounds. I think he went on and scored 2 goals in that game against Atletico Ottawa. So it's just really nice to see him enjoying his football.
Joao Morelli certainly loves to play football in Canada. Here he is with Charlie O'Connor-Clark.
Let's look back quickly on just last season. A very good one for you personally, not necessarily the one that the club wanted, I think, after going to the final in PEI and then just missing out on the playoffs last year. What was that season like kind of as a group for you guys, and maybe what do you think you guys maybe learned from that as a team?
I mean, it was really close. I think all we needed was to win the last game. But I mean, we learned a lot. We had difficulties during the season, and I think this is going to be the main thing for us this season, is not conceding goals like in the last 10 minutes of the games, which we did like a lot of times. We were like leading the game and then just tying at the end made us like lose a lot of points. And it's just basic stuff which we've been like working on this too. I mean, obviously for me, I was happy with my performances and I got the awards and everything, but as I said before, I would like change that for the team to win the league. So the main thing this year is to adjust the things that we need to and hopefully get to the top 4 and from there we'll see what happens.
Halifax. This is going to be your third year with the club. Your second actually being able to play in Halifax. But you've spent a lot of time all over the world in your career, right? You played at home in Brazil and in England and Estonia.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about what it's been like coming to Halifax and why you're happy here, why you like staying here.
When I was 18, all I wanted was to play in Europe, and I went to a big club. But my expectations were too high. Nothing related to football. I thought my life would be perfect, and it's not like that. Obviously, everywhere you go, you have problems, hard times, like with people. Mm-hmm. Then I was like a stubborn kid when I was 18, man. I was just here. I found honestly, my teammates. I can literally call them brothers. So this is something that makes me feel happy, because off the pitch is. If you're good off the pitch, then on the pitch, it's more than 50% that you're gonna be at your best.
When you go home, to Brazil, I know that you were home in Brazil recently over the winter. What do you tell people about what it's like to be in Halifax and to live in Canada?
I just tell good stuff, man. I love Halifax. I'm having the best time of my life, so all good stuff, man. I don't think there's a bad thing that I can say.
What are you most looking forward to about just getting back out on the pitch and having another season to go for it and to go for that top 4 spot?
Yeah, I'm excited again to play here. Hopefully this year we can get things right and make less mistakes. And for sure, if we make less mistakes, we're gonna be on the top 4. There's a lot of pressure on me to do again what I did, which is really hard. But I'm training the hardest I can. I'm taking care of myself as much as I can to do it again. And yeah, man, I'm excited. We have a lot to prove. It's funny, we're always the underdogs for the league, but it's okay. But we're gonna prove a lot of people wrong for sure this year.
Do you maybe embrace that idea of being maybe the player that other guys and other teams are that's the guy we need to focus on?
This year, everyone starts from zero, so I'm not anymore. Let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens. I guess that's the motivation factor, no? You win MVP, Player of the Year, you win Golden Boot, and then that's what happens. You just don't want to go out there and start again, and that's what it is. I think Charlie's frozen right now as well, and so no, he's back. Charlie, are you here?
Great timing. Great. I love when that happens.
You had a little smile on your face there, buddy. It was fine. It was absolutely fine. But yeah, your overall impressions from Morelli, having spent a good chunk of your day with him.
Yeah, it was great. He loves to speak highly of Halifax and of the club, and especially of his teammates. I know that became quite close, especially during the pandemic, with meetings on Zoom, and a lot of the players, once they did get to Halifax, were living together and so on. So they became very close over that time, and that's a bond that's clearly stayed because a lot of those players are still there at the club. So I'm very excited to see how that continues to progress this year, because they do have something solid in place in Halifax.
One final thing on Morelli, and I talked to Stephen Hart about it this morning, is that yes, he was Player of the Year last year. Yes, he was Golden Boot of the Year, winner of the year. Last year, he got 14 goals. Joao Morelli only played in 58% of Halifax season last year. He missed a chunk of time, significant time down, particularly down the last few months of the season. When Joao Morelli was on the pitch last year, Halifax outscored opponents 21-19. When he was not on the pitch, they got outscored 15-7. That's how valuable he was. That's how big he was. And if Joao Morelli's playing a lot of minutes this year for them, look at Halifax Wanderers, a real contender for the top 4.